Shalom.
Shalom, shalom, everyone. Shalom, brother Brad.
Shalom, Brother Jadiel. Ben, Ariel,
Hello.
Shalom, brother.
Ike.
All right. So we have a couple good questions today. Um, Brother Ben, you want to ask the first one?
Yeah, so I've been watching a lot of debating lately, kind of just, seeing how other people do it. It's mainly debates between Trinitarians and Torah believers. Just, one person bringing their case, the other person bringing their case. Just trying to get some stuff under my belt, just kind of seeing, some people cadences and stuff. Anyway, so one of the Trinitarians brought up Hebrews 8, verse 13, saying that the old covenant, that they use that. I don't know what version of the Bible they were using for scripture, but it's not the same wording at all for the King James, but it did say that, that it was obsolete. And they kept asking the Torah believer what was obsolete. They were trying to pin him in a corner just by using this verse. So, and so I guess I know that it hasn't been done away, but if this verse came out to me being certain experience, I definitely trip all over it. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of cut and dry, but at the same time, I'm sure it's not, because I'm sure there's lots of other scripture. There is other scripture that you know can refute that claim. So that was the first one. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good one. It's pretty deep. We're gonna go back to that. It literally connects to the other one that you was talking about with the
Okay.
Daniel
Yeah.
chapter
So
9. But what usually happens is that people section out chapters, especially in the book of Hebrews. In the book of Hebrews, they section out the chapters. They make one chapter end, and the next chapter is the beginning of a supposedly totally different thought. And the problem is that it doesn't do that. There's no chapters, there's no in the original text or in the manuscript that we use for what we have. There's no chapters. So when Paul is writing his letter, the letter doesn't just end when people close it with a chapter. So let's look at, I would say we're going to look a little bit at chapter 7, and we're going to go into chapter 8, and we're going to look a little bit about chapter 9. So let me pull up the Bible right here. All right.
Do you mean in the same way, like how they separate everything with titles and like pretend like it's different stories even throughout a chapter? Is that what you're talking about? The same type of thing?
Yes. And how they pull, even in the same chapter, they pull verses out and things like that, things along those lines. So that's an issue because they're not seeing the whole picture. So let's look at this, right? So chapter 7, he talks about Melchizedek, but he goes into the Levitical priesthood, right? And he makes this statement here in Hebrews chapter 7, verse 11. He says, if therefore perfection were by the Levitical priesthood, for under it the people received the law, what further need was there that another priesthood should rise after the order of Melchizedek and not be called after the order of Aaron? So the first question is, the people received the law through the priesthood or through Moses? How did they receive the law? How was the law given to the people? The law wasn't given to the people
from
through
Yah
the Levitical priesthood. Huh?
Yeah. From Yah to Moses.
Right.
People? Yeah.
But the Levites had to demonstrate something to the people that only the Levites and the Levites and the Levitical priesthood could do. Only they can demonstrate a certain thing to the people. So the people received the understanding of the law of specific laws from the Levites, but the other laws they received from Yah, they received from Moses, they received, from prophets. So it says here that the Levitical priesthood, under it, they received this, so they went into another law. So it says the priesthood being changed, there was made a necessity of a change of also the law. So the law of priesthood was changed. So the laws pertaining to priesthood was affected by the priesthood being changed. The priesthood is something that only, like I said, only the Levites were able to perform this priesthood. So the change was in the fulfillment, right? And it talks about Messiah being a priest, where he says, for he of whom these things are spoken pertain to another tribe, of which no man gave attendance at the law. For it is evident that our master sprang out of Judah, which tribe Moses spake nothing concerning priesthood, right? So we're starting to look at what law the Levites showed everyone or revealed to everyone. What did the people receive from the Levitical demonstration? They received a perception of the priesthood. Like they could not become priests, Levitical priests, but they received an understanding of, they learned from a priesthood that they could not be a part of. So the change, that change of the priesthood is talking about Messiah fulfilling that priesthood. That's why he says he was not able to attend the altar because he was from Judah. And the law that pertained to the priesthood did not say anything about somebody from the law, from the order of Judah doing service at the altar. Let me try to make it clear. So when we're looking at what law we're talking about, look at what it says here. It says, it is yet far more evident for that after the similitude of Melchizedek that there arise another priesthood. Right? For that after the similitude of Melchizedek there arise another priest, who is made not after the law of a carnal commandment or a fleshly commandment, like an earthly commandment, fleshly, but after the power of an endless life. So we're seeing how the Levitical priesthood is fulfilled, and they're only remaining this priesthood. But when the priesthood is fulfilled, something happens to the laws that pertain to that priesthood. So if you look it through here, all you're going to see is, the priesthood demonstration. It says right here, they truly were many priests because they were not allowed to continue by reason of death. But this man, because he continues forever, have an unchangeable priesthood. So we're very specific. This is not talking about laws like thou shalt not kill, or it's not talking about laws like keep the Shabbat. It's very specific. There were laws that only the Levitical priesthood could do. And that's what chapter 7 is talking about. The transition between the priesthood that only the Levites were performing into a kingdom of priests in which everybody is involved. Everybody is involved in this priesthood. Let me go down. So he continues to have this conversation about priests right before he gets to chapter 8. For such a high priest became us, who is holy, harmless, undefiled, separate from sinners, and made higher than the heavens, who needed not daily as those priests, right, to offer up sacrifices, first for his own sins, then for the people's. For this he did once when he offered up himself. This is just a little bit about Daniel 9, about causing the sacrifices to cease. You see what I'm saying? So he's saying earthly priests had to keep on doing this for themselves and for the people, but the Messiah did this once when he offered up himself. So it says, for the law makes men high priests. So now we see what law we're talking about, right? We're talking about sea laws. We're talking about feasts. We talk when the only law that we're talking about says, "For the law makes men high priests." So we're talking about priesthood laws. We're not talking about anything else, because no other law makes men high priests except for the laws pertaining to the Levites. So it says, which have infirmity, but the word of oath, which was since the law, makes the Son who is consecrated forevermore. Now watch this. As we get into chapter 8, there's no deviation from what we're specifically talking about, which is the priesthood laws and everything that surrounded the priests. When you're dealing with the covenant has, I think we had a series on the covenants. The covenants has like a surrounding elements of, what do we call it? We call it addendums, right? Addendums is like additions to a covenant, or covenants or agreements within an agreement, right? So when he made the covenant with them, he then made a Levitical priesthood. So if we go back to Torah, we see that if we go back to Exodus, we're going to see when he closed, we're going to come back to Hebrews 8. Look at what he did. After him going through, he spoke the 10 commandments in chapter 20. Then chapter 11, he starts with the judgments, as well as the statutes. He gets to 22, right? The statutes, how things should be, civil, right? Chapter 23, he even touches on the Shabbat and the feasts in chapter 23, right? Then when we get to chapter 24, there's a covenant that is confirmed. There's a covenant that is confirmed, and Moses makes the sacrifice, right? He tells all the people, Moses came and told the people all the words of yahuah, all the judgments. All the people answered with one voice, all the words that yahuah said we will do. Moses wrote. So you see where what Moses is writing, right? He's writing chapter 20 to chapter 24. This is very important. Chapter 20 to chapter 24. This is what Moses is writing in a book. This is what he's confirming the covenant with. This is what he's reading to the ears of the people. Exodus chapter 20 to Exodus chapter 24. He takes the book of the covenant, he reads it in the audience of the people, and everybody says all that yahuah has said we will do. Moses took blood and sprinkled it on the people in the blood of the covenant which yahuah had made with you concerning the words. Now, when we get to chapter 25, we start getting into a different set of laws. Sanctuary laws. But who deals with the sanctuary? Does all Israel deal with the sanctuary? No. Only person that deals with the sanctuary is Levites. You have the Ark of the Covenant, you have the sanctuary, you have the table of showbread, you have the lampstand, right? Chapter 26, you have the tabernacle, and then you have chapter 27, where you have the bronze altar, you have the court of the tabernacle, you have the oil lamp. Chapter 28, you have the priest's garments. And chapter 29, the consecration of the priests, and the table of showbread, and the sacrifices that the priests had to demonstrate, where the people will receive an understanding from the Levites, from the priesthood. The priesthood would demonstrate something, and the people will receive like an object lesson from them, watching them sacrifice and watching them do these ceremonies and these rituals. The people receive the understanding of the law of priesthood. Altar of incense, chapter 30. And then we get to chapter 31, where Yah gives the wisdom to actually make these elements, the candlestick and all these things. And then we get to Shabbat in chapter 31. We get to the Shabbat in chapter 31. And then we get to the golden calf in chapter 32. So many people don't really analyze all the details of how things are done. When Yah initially was giving the commandments in chapter 20, he stopped in chapter 24. After he gave the feasts, the Shabbats, how we should treat each other when it comes to stealing, marriage, all of that stuff. And then he said, I'm gonna write these words in a book. This is gonna be the book of the law. And then we're gonna make a covenant based off of these words here in the book of the covenant. All Israel. After they confirm the covenant with the sacrifice and they ratify the covenant with blood, sprinkled it on a book, sprinkled it on a people, then he goes back up the mountain and Yah starts to give him Levitical priesthood laws. You see, everybody, like, I would be the first one to say, yeah, there's one law, but don't act like there's no categories. It's very clear that he stopped at one point to confirm it with the blood of the covenant, and then he continued afterwards to institute the Levitical priests in a certain position so the people can learn from watching them. They could not offer sacrifices. Remember Saul when he tried to offer a sacrifice? They could not offer sacrifices. They were not allowed. It was against the law of the Levitical priests. It was against the sacrificial law for anyone besides a Levite or a son of Aaron to execute a sacrifice and to do service at the temple. So when you're looking at the actual issue with when it says the law was fulfilled, can you fulfill thou shalt not kill? Can you fulfill if somebody steals your ox to replace it? Do you fulfill those things? You do fulfill those things. Do you complete it and move it out the way? Do you replace it? You don't. This is a lifestyle fulfillment. Like, we fulfill it every single time it happens. But the priesthood, we don't do, because we're not Levites, right? The Levites did something that everybody doesn't do. We watch and we learn what Yah is trying to tell us from what they're doing. When they offer the sacrifices in the morning and evening, the people are actually praying and worshiping. They're not offering sacrifices. Even when you bring an offering to the altar, it is you strike the neck, and it is the priest that catches the blood and does the rest of the service. Don't do that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There was times where people were by themselves and they offered a sacrifice, but those were not like Israelite sacrifices. Those were not sacrifices for the whole people of Israel. The priest was there to demonstrate something for the whole people of Israel. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when you look at chapter 7, he's telling you that a law changed, but he's telling you that the priesthood changed.
Right.
So he's not saying that the whole law is changed just because the priesthood changed. That would be a misunderstanding of Exodus chapter 20 to 24, and then chapter 25 all the way to chapter 31.
Yeah.
Okay. It would bunch everything into the same scenario, same situation, and cause them to just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, oh, this is done. Oh, everything is done. That's why they do that. Oh, sacrifice is done. Oh, feast is done. How? Feast was given before the Levitical priesthood. Feast was in chapter 23. The feast was given in chapter 23, right before chapter 24, when he ratified and confirmed the covenant. Right before he gave them the Levitical priests, the priesthood, how they should do things, the Ark of the Covenant, all of that stuff. Before they had all of that stuff, he told us to keep the feast.
Right.
He told us to treat each other a certain way. He told us to treat marriage a certain way. He told us to keep the Shabbat. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
is there also a way to prove, like, I don't know where we stand on this. This is a kind of an offshoot of this whole subject. Is there any way to show, like, Abraham sacrifice, and he had certain ways of, like, is the law of Moses, quote unquote, the law that Yahuwah gave Moses to the people,
Mhm.
are those laws, from the very, very
Yeah,
beginning? Like
yeah.
all of them? Like all
No,
of
no,
them,
no,
or
no, no,
no?
no, no,
No, but like,
no. You when you look at it, is it's kind of like Passover. Passover was not given to Abraham
right.
because Passover has a very specific remembrance pertaining to Egypt, pertaining to remembering when he was delivered, when Israel was delivered from Egypt as a nation. When Abraham was alive, there was no nation.
Right.
There was no nation. So Passover was to remind a nation that a nation was delivered from Egypt. It wouldn't make sense that Abraham would have Passover in that way. Like
Yeah.
the actual festival of Passover that we keep, that festival didn't exist. But the understanding of being passed over, right? The understanding of Yah passing over judgment over and pouring on your enemies or your oppressors. This idea has always existed because Abraham was always protected. As he walked with Yah, he was protected from his enemies. And as long as he was walking with him, Yah will pass over him. So there's these nuances that you can connect certain elements, but the whole aspect of Passover, unleavened bread, is very specific to
Right.
even the unleavened bread. Like it says that the unleavened bread was supposed to remind them that they didn't have time to leaven their bread. They would cast out haste, it says in Exodus chapter 13. So everything is rooted in Exodus 12 and 13.
Yeah.
You see? So there's a lot of people who do say, hey, Abraham was keeping, or Lot was keeping Passover because he made unleavened bread. Unleavened bread was what they made. Like that was something that they didn't just start making unleavened bread in Egypt.
Yeah.
Like they've been making all types of bread. That was the way that they ate when there was a famine. It's not like American stuff, right? Like when there was a famine, they still had animals. They had animals. They wasn't slaughtering their animals, eating burgers and steaks every day. That wasn't the main portion of their meal. The main portion of their meal was the grain, the rice, the barley, the meal, right? The cornmeal, the bread. That was the main aspect of their meal. Matter of fact, you can actually look at the, what do they call it? Mediterranean food, where they have like certain food in like certain food in that part of town. It's not even like Israel. It's like that whole area, what they call Middle East.
Mhm.
It's like bread, hummus, right? It's like
Yeah.
beans, grains. That's how they ate. So when it was a famine, they didn't have no grain. So what they did was they was coming to Joseph trying to sell their animals to get grain. So the idea, many people think, because there's a famine, is like there's no, everything is dead. No, there's no grain. So because there's no grain, there's no bread, there's no beans, there's no things, healthy things that actually allowed them to thrive. You see, it's not like us where it's like a burger. If McDonald's is closed, people are starving. Like there's no nuggets to shove in their kids' mouth. Like people
Right.
don't know what to give their kids. That's not how it was. That's not how it was. So the idea that they made unleavened bread before the Feast of Unleavened Bread, that wasn't like a surprise. It's
Yeah.
just that now it had a certain type of uh, perception during that time, not any other time. I always tell people, you eat lamb on another day, It's just lamb. You're not eating a Passover lamb every time you eat lamb. That's just lamb.
Yeah.
It's only the Passover lamb on Passover. You see what I'm saying? So, yeah. So they did not keep certain specifics, but a lot of the stuff that Moses received was rooted in what the experience was with the forefathers, with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yeah,
So a lot
because
of that was rooted in there.
yeah, like Yah, like when Cain and Abel were giving up their offering to Yah, like was that just Yah telling them specifically, this is what I want you to do right now? Like this other guy that I was watching in that debate, I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
He's bringing out stuff that like he's trying to say that the law was eternal from the very beginning. And I'm thinking he's trying to say that the Mosaic law was eternal from the very beginning. And that's why I was asking you about that, because that didn't make a lot of sense to me. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it depends on what you're saying about the Mosaic law. You know, are you saying that there's things that can't be fulfilled in the Mosaic law? Because there's things that never, the principle of these things will never disappear. Like, if you look at Messiah is the Passover lamb. He's never going to stop being the Passover lamb. Like, we're always going to have a Passover lamb in existence. Now, are we going to be killing lambs? I don't think so, because there's not going to be death. Death only arose because of sin.
Right.
Animals didn't die, nor did animals eat other animals in Genesis. In Genesis, animals ate the same thing that humans ate. We ate from the ground.
Yeah. One thing that I think might help and kind of jump off of what Ben's saying is I think if we look at Noah was in covenant, Noah died, they left covenant and they ate blood. And then Moses on Mount Sinai was taught the law again. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but like there is evidence that the covenant and some portions of the law existed before. So I guess that's the question, is how do you distinguish what did and didn't exist, other than, like you said, the Passover? Clearly that was a moment in time and then forwards. That makes sense. But I guess that's the question, is what predated and what was a part of the covenant that, say, Noah or Adam took part in, if that makes sense.
That's a good question. It's clear that the sacrificial system predated Moses.
Yeah.
Just when they got to Moses, what Yah wanted to do was Yah wanted to structure the law, or the laws that was given before. He wanted to structure the law to govern a nation instead of Abraham and his family. You see, there's a difference between teaching a family and then spreading, you have Melchizedek over here, you have Abimelech over here, you have Abraham over here, you have Lot over here, you have families and people like that were righteous, right? Even the Amorites, Yah didn't want to give the land to Abraham because they weren't sinful. Their sins was not grievous to Yah. Like Yah still had an influence with the Amorites. You see what I'm saying? Melchizedek is an Amorite, by the way. But anyway, we're going to talk about that later.
I do want to do a talk on Melchizedek sometime.
Yeah, Melchizedek he was a Canaanite. But anyway, because he was the king. Anyway, I don't want to go too many places. But Yah was dealing with nations. Like when Abraham went to Abimelech, to Gerar, when there was a famine in Canaan, he went to Abimelech, and Abimelech was like, he told Yah in a dream, he said, I didn't touch Sarah. He said, no, I know you didn't touch him, because you are innocent in this respect. And then when he went to Abraham, he said, how come you didn't tell me this was your wife? And he said, I didn't know. This is the first statement he said before he said, I thought you was going to kill me. He said, I didn't know you was a righteous nation. That's what he said to Abimelech. He says, I didn't know you guys were a righteous nation, meaning I didn't know you guys had honor and did righteously with each other. I didn't know you dealt that way. So I lied because I thought you would kill me and deal unrighteously with me. So Abraham found out that these people don't commit adultery. They don't take other people's wives. They don't do those things. So how? He was talking to Yah. He didn't seem surprised. He was trying to explain. He didn't say, who are you? You know, we see that a lot in scripture, right? Who are you, master? Like, who are you? No, we don't see that. We see Abimelech like, no, I didn't touch him. I didn't touch her. And then Yah's like, no, I know you didn't touch her. You know, I know you didn't touch her. And I'm just letting you know who Abraham is. This is my prophet. I'm moving him, giving back his wife. If you don't give him back his wife, it's going to be really bad for you guys. You know, so Abraham realized this group of people actually had a moral standard that matched up with Yah's standard. He didn't know. So he got afraid. By the time you get to Moses, they're not dealing with nations that was like that. It's kind of like when you get to our time, it's not the same way it is in Moses' time. You see what I'm saying? Many people, they look at that and there's a reality. It's worse now. This is even Messiah said it in Matthew 24. It's going to be the worst time since a nation existed. So morality, you got to turn on the TV, see what morality looks like in our day. That wouldn't even exist in pagan countries. Matter of fact, 1 Corinthians chapter 5, when one dude was in Corinth and he was sleeping with his mother, he said that the Gentiles don't even do that. That's what Paul said. You can't say that now. Like, you can't. Who you gonna say? What nation you gonna say don't do that? That's like normal. That incest stuff is normal in every country now. But Paul was like, Gentiles don't even do that. That's a crazy statement compared to what we can't say that now. You know. But anyway, so there were many righteous points that Yah was teaching the world. You know, even through Abraham. Matter of fact, Melchizedek was there before Abraham. He was the priest of the Most High. So who was he teaching? He was teaching everybody in Jerusalem. Who occupied Jerusalem at that time? It was the Canaanites. So he was teaching the Canaanites. You had a high priest from the high priest of the Most High, a king in a Canaanite land. What was he teaching them? So when we get to the point where it's like, oh, Yah is kicking these nations out, he's kicking them out because they were rejecting what Yah was trying to give them before. Yeah, righteous kings that was following Yah called the priests of the Most High. And by the time Joshua came, the king of Jerusalem was trying to kill him. And his name was Adonizedek. Adonizedek was trying to kill Joshua. But so give me 1 second. We're gonna go back to that because I want to show you how it goes into chapter 8, and the reason why every time they hear law, they automatically think it's every single law written. But when you start at chapter 7 and go into chapter 8 and you look at Exodus and you see the differentiation between the laws that only the Levites did and the law that all Israel did. It was two different things. Matter of fact, if you did what the Levites were supposed to do, you got killed. Right. If you touched the ark, you already know. You saw what happened to Uzzah. You touch the ark, you die. You know, but I'm gonna go to let's go to Brad. Sorry, Brad, you gotta end up for a while.
It's all good. At least it was an electronic can, and I'm a physical hand.
Right.
Like my brother Ben and Jamie was saying, I too have been watching a lot of debates, and it sounds like him and I was watching the very same one a few days ago.
I didn't want to say who it was, but
I'm not gonna plug him on here.
But who was it? Who was it?
him in context, it sounds like is who he was watching.
Yeah, it was. All right. Yeah, it was.
He's a
And it
nice
was a
guy.
debate. Yeah, I like it. I like Sean. He really is knowledgeable, but you know there are things that
Yeah. There's some
that
stuff he says that, yeah.
some
Yeah,
different things.
it's Hebrew roots, Jewish people type stuff, Rob Skiba type
Yeah,
teaching. So is he branched off a little bit, but he's very heavy on what the Hebrew roots kind of paved the way for, you know. But I like
very.
I like his
thoughts
personality.
Oh, sorry.
He's very consistent with when he's teaching, and you know, I would like to meet him one day. But go ahead.
I appreciate his teachings. He's one of those ones where you know. Well, let me get back to that. My question here that I had in that debate, the other gentleman was talking about how Sean asked him. He said that you know, do you believe that yahusha is the high priest? And he said, no, he can't be the high priest because he's not a Levite. So my question is now that, but now Ben, you know, you brought this up, and I'm sure that's probably one of the reasons why you brought this up was that right there. But my question is how then is he able to be the high priest, being you know, a Jew from Judah, the line of Judah? How is he able to do that, not being a Levite? Although, I mean, the only answer I can come up with is he's Yahusha. So, I mean, but how is he able to do that?
Yeah, there's one of the things, and it just goes back to like kind of dissecting. I think that one of the things that people don't do is kind of look at put the pieces together. Like you saw what we read in Exodus, right? He stopped at Exodus 24. People don't know that there was a priesthood. One, that Melchizedek priesthood was before Abraham, because he was already priest before he met Abraham.
When Abraham paid tithes to Melchizedek.
Right. So that's there you go. That's one law that kind of transferred in to that's why when people associate tithes to Levites, that doesn't make sense, because Abraham paid tithes. You can't associate no law with the Levites if Abraham paid tithes. So if Abraham paid tithes, why did he do it? If why he did it is the reason that we ought to do it. Why is the reason that we ought to do it? He told Jacob married two sisters. The Torah says don't marry two sisters. Why do we not marry two sisters? Because what happened with Jacob? It's like the why is the reason why we do it or don't do it. You know, why did Abraham pay tithes? That's why we do it. Just because it was applied to Levites doesn't mean it doesn't apply. It does apply, you know. But anyway, the Melchizedek priesthood existed, right? So there was a priesthood that existed that Yah wanted his people to be. What happens is, and I'm telling you, this is what nobody knows. I'm gonna give you a secret. I'm gonna post this, so it's gonna be out. But I think that we talked about it before. So let me show you. Ready, guys? So Exodus 19.
Brad's so excited. Sorry to interrupt you. He's just like waiting for it.
Exodus 19. They travel, they get to Mount Sinai, right? They get to the wilderness of Sinai. In verse 6, Yahuwah says something very important in verse 5 and 6. He says, now therefore, if you obey my voice, keep my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar treasure, or my jewels, to me above all people, for all the earth is mine. I know sometimes people forget that even though one nation is going to be blessed above all people, all the earth he wants to be his eventually. So these people are supposed to kind of redeem the earth back to him. But anyway, people don't get that. It says, and you shall be a kingdom of priests. Did he say the Levites? I'm gonna get the Levites to be priests. Did he say that? No. He said all Israel was going to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And these are the words which you shall speak unto the children of Israel. And then he calls all the elders, which were from every tribe, right? And he laid before their faces all the words which Yahuwah commanded him. And they started out saying, all that Yahuwah has spoken, we will do. Just like he said later on. But this is how it was intended to be, a kingdom of priests. Now watch what happens. I think I'm going to just put it right here so you guys can see the title. This is what happens. Golden calf. Now, during the golden calf, let me see if I could. Now watch this. During the golden calf, you guys know the story, so I'm trying to fast forward to just a very specific part. During the golden calf, he said, when Moses saw, this is verse 25 of chapter 32. When Moses saw the people were naked,
I missed that part.
give me 1 second. Unto their shame among their enemies, Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, who is on Yahuwah's side? Let them come to me. Who came to him?
The sons of Levi.
The sons of Levi. And then he told the sons of Levi to slay all the men that were actually perpetuating this wickedness. And then he says, and the children of Levi did according to the word of Moses. And then Moses said, consecrate yourselves, right? So he starts out by saying, every kingdom, right? A kingdom of priests, and then all the elders, right? And then when they, let me just confirm, just to reiterate something. When they went and they killed, when it says they killed everybody, it was talking about the elders, like the leadership. It was talking about the ones that was leading everybody to do it, right? It wasn't talking about like every single individual. It was talking about everybody who influenced other people. That's why there were still people left. It wasn't just Levites. So the people even the ones that died in the wilderness, it wasn't every single person from that time died in the wilderness. It was every single man of war that did not want to take the promised land. They died. And everybody else with the youth went in. So I just want to make that clear when they say all and stuff like that. Like, context is very important. So now check this out, guys. So I want us to be clear. He asked them to be a kingdom of priests. He told them to consecrate themselves so he can tell them the law, right? So all of them to give the law to the nations. They built the golden calf. They started worshiping the golden calf. When Moses said, who's on Yah's side, the only people that came was Levi. So when we get to Numbers chapter 3, he says here in verse 12, he says, behold, I have taken the Levites from among the children of Israel. And then he says, instead. Do you know what that means? Anybody? Instead of, right? That means that there was somebody else that he had.
Yeah, it was the whole kingdom.
Right.
So now he is taking up Levi because
Exactly.
Levi jumped forward and made a stand.
Right. So look at what it says. All the firstborn that opens the matrix among the children of Israel, therefore the Levites shall be mine, because all the firstborn are mine. For on the day that I smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, because he gave this commandment in Exodus 13 before they left Egypt. So he was already planning a whole nation of firstborn of every family was going to be a priest, firstborn of every family that existed, not just Aaron. Remember, it's just Aaron now.
Right. Outside of Levi.
Right.
Now
So Levi can't be high priest ever. Only Aaron and his sons can be high priests. No one else can be high priest. But the Levites can do service with the high priest or with Aaron's sons. So he says, number the children of Levi, the house of their fathers, by their families, every male, a month old and upwards shall you number. Moses numbered them according to the word of yahuah. These are the sons of Levi by their name. And he starts to give them all the names of Levi, right? And then this is what he does with the Levites. So he says, their charge shall be the ark, the table, the coat, the candlestick, the altar, the vessels of the sanctuary wherein they minister, right? And he says, Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest shall be chief over the chief of the Levites and have the oversights of them that keep charge of the sanctuary. So the high priest or the children of the high priest would be the head of all the Levites. So later on, he says that he gave the Levites to Aaron. So when you keep on reading Numbers chapter 3, 4, 5, you'll see that he gave all the Levites to Aaron. So Aaron is in charge of all the Levites. That's why they're all working together. But only Aaron and his sons were high priests. Everyone else did priesthood duties, but they were never able to be high priests. Now, that's not what he intended. He had a Melchizedek priesthood. That Melchizedek priesthood was supposed to be established in the firstborn of every single family in Israel. Because of the golden calf, he chose Levi because Levi decided to repent. When Levi repented, he said, I'm going to use you to try to teach everyone that they will receive the law from you, like that they would receive everything I'm trying to give them by watching you. So he established another priesthood called the Levitical priesthood. So when the Levitical priesthood is completed, meaning that Messiah came to restore the original priesthood of the firstborn of every family of Israel, that the Levitical priesthood would be replaced by the one that Yah intended in Exodus 19.
To be the Melchizedek priesthood.
Right. See, they didn't say Melchizedek in Exodus 19, but who's the one giving it? It's yahuah. Yahuah is Melchizedek. He's the king of righteousness. And his son it matches because Aaron was the high priest, and then his sons is the priest after him. So you have Yahuwah gives it to his son, and then he gives it to his other sons and daughters.
And that's already happened? Is that why we're considered the priests of our own homes?
It's never stopped. The Melchizedek priesthood was never put on pause because everybody was too wicked to actually enter into an everlasting covenant with Yah. The problem was only few was able to enter into a covenant with Yah, and those few had to be examples for everybody else until they finally used the law as a schoolmaster to bring them to faith because they didn't have it. You see? So Galatians 3 would tell you that when the law was established, including the Levitical priesthood, it was to help everybody realize their position as priests, but it wasn't easy. That's all I have to say, really. There's a story about Phinehas. You guys ever heard about Phinehas? He had the javelin, put it through those people that was fornicating with the Midianite women. That's Aaron's son. He was a Levitical priest. When he did that, Yah said, I'm going to give you an everlasting priesthood. If he's already a son of Aaron, and he's already due the Levitical priesthood by inheritance, What is so special about an everlasting priesthood from Yah if it's the same priesthood that the Levites had? So when you go look up Phinehas, you'll see, or in thing in some translation call him Phineas. But when you go look it up, Phineas or Phinehas, he's Aaron's son already. So he was going to be a priest already. But when he saved Israel from plague by executing judgment for Yah, Yah said, I'm going to give him an everlasting priesthood. Which one is that? He's already a Levite. He's already a son of Aaron. So what is this everlasting priesthood? Well, it was the everlasting priesthood. So even though he was a Levitical priest, he entered into a covenant of obedience and faith, and he received the priesthood because of his faith and obedience. Even though he was a Levitical priest already, he received the Melchizedek priesthood. So that's how they always entered in. That's why when they took the Ruach off of Moses, it only went on 70 people instead of all of Israel. And that's why in Numbers chapter 11, Moses said, don't you know, in Numbers chapter 11, don't you know that Yah wants all his people to be prophets and all his people to receive the Ruach? You see that? Moses is watching Israel not receive the Ruach. Only a few people. Joshua, Caleb, and like 70 elders and 2 people that was in the camp. That's it. So if you think about that, it's just like what's going on now, but the diabolical thing that Satan has done is make everybody think that they have the Ruach. So nobody's trying to get the Ruach. Everybody has the Ruach. Everybody has the Ruach. Everybody feels the Ruach. The Ruach is telling them all this other stuff. It's except what it's in the scriptures. That's not how it works. So you got a lot of deception. People think they have the Ruach and they really don't. And if you tell somebody they don't have the Ruach, that's like the ultimate offense. They would never talk to you again. You know, a good thing, I don't care. So I say it all the time, but I say it as a good thing. If you find out you don't have the Ruach, guess what you could do? You can actually go get it. You could go get it now. But if you think you have it and you don't, and you stay that way, you're never going to get it. It's like the foolish woman with no oil. You have the lamp, you can't even light it because you don't have no oil. And then you're going to wait all the way until the time where now you can't go get it. So it's in everybody's best interest, you know. Sometimes we don't have to tell people how much of a believer they are or how much how people are saved. We don't have to tell people that. We need to tell them, go and make sure. Even if they're your children and your spouses and family members, if somebody is feeling weird about it, don't reaffirm something that you really don't know, because nobody knows another person's state with Yah. No husband, no wife. You don't know each other's state. You can't see the Ruach inside another person. So it is in our best interest to make sure that everybody continuously reinforces the understanding that they have the Ruach from Yah. Go back to Yah, make sure that he is filling you every day with his Ruach. And never try to say, don't feel bad. Don't feel depressed. No, say, go to Yah. He will show you. He will show you, and he will fill you. And he will strengthen you and all of those things. Because I can't do that. We can't do that for each other. We can only testify of what he did with us. Testimonies is the only thing we could give each other, but we can't give each other the experience, and we can't see the experience inside of what's going on inside a person. We can only see what's manifested outside, and even that is limited. We can praise Yah for what we see on the outside, but when somebody is not sure for themselves, you don't be sure for them. You tell them, hey, do you have the Ruach? Do you believe you have the Ruach? If they don't know, then they need to go to Yah to find that out. not to us. You know, I remember somebody asked that question on Q&A. Hey, I'm afraid to walk because the demons are gonna jump. And I said, do you have the ruach? You have the spirit of Yah? And they said, well, he helps me sometimes. And this is like, that's not an answer for somebody who has it. You see what I'm saying? Somebody who has it knows that in their own private lives, their lives is changed. The reason why we're so adamant of telling people is because in our private mind and heart, things is different. And you can't hold it in because it's like, I'm not the same. I mean, people may not even see it at first, but it doesn't matter because I know that the stuff that I was dealing with is gone. The captivity that I had in my mind is gone. You see, I know. And that's how people ought to know. But as far as me knowing, if you tell me, I'm going to believe you and I'm just going to correct the things that may be misunderstood. But if you don't know if you have it, you got to go and make sure with Yah. You got to go to him and say, Father, fill me with your Ruach. I believe because that is the only way to receive the Ruach is by belief. Nothing else, not even no commandment, no nothing. Belief is the only way that you receive this free gift. And everything else is by belief. Belief is so important and so misunderstood at the same time. You know, so I don't know how we got here though, but it's a good place. But anyway, yeah,
wrong,
Levites. So we see so I want you guys to notice nobody is ever gonna go to Numbers and see that the Levites became priests instead. Nobody's gonna see that. Nobody's ever gonna talk about that. I've never heard no YouTube, nobody say nothing about that. They just go straight to Levi's, the first priest. There was a guy named Melchizedek. Maybe he's Seth, but that's after. No. It was there. It was there with Israel. They messed up. They could not enter into that priesthood. Just like they could not enter, just like what we're about to read in chapter 8. We're about to read something in chapter 8 right now. But let me go to the hands real quick. Let me go to Brother Aria and then Brother Ben.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Brother Johnny. Just really quick point before I ask my question, but I just was writing things down. You were speaking. You said experiential. That's what I says. Until you experience the Most High in your mind, you know, in your thoughts, and it changes you. You're right. You can try and express that as best you can, but that's something that just doesn't. The other person hardly going to fathom or really understand until they have that experience. So I think I was talking to my wife about that the other morning. It's just like you have to experience it, right? And when the Most High Yah does something in your life, then you know, right? That's how the belief came. That's how you know that it wasn't me. I couldn't have done this. But just saying it, most people will be like, okay, they're listening, but until they experience it. But I just wanted to quickly comment on that. Are you saying, because I was listening when you're saying, I've never caught that. Are you saying because it could have been any of the other 11 tribes, or because Levi repented? And when the question was asked, you said, who's on y'all's side? There in Numbers of Bamidbar 3. So it could have been any of the other tribes. It's just that he chose Levi because of what they did. Yep. Never heard that. Right. But we just got to reading it.
They're the only ones that came on your side. They're the only ones that repented. Because remember, Aaron is the one that made the golden calf.
Yes.
So, but when y'all called the men, but when y'all called the men to come to Yah, The men of Levi are the only ones that came to Yah.
Wow. Yeah.
Now there's always an in between. There's always the people that have no clue. They're just sitting back, wondering. Yah is looking at men, like you men that led these people. Who's on Yah's side? Okay. Oh, you guys are not on Yah's side? All right. Everybody who's on Yah's side, go and slay all those men who blatantly stood against Yah. Not the ones that followed and didn't really have a leadership. They just came out of Egypt. And that's why it's like, you know, when I was younger, before I was reading the whole thing, I thought that everybody was killed except for Levi, and that Yah made 12 tribes out of the Levites. That's the only thing I could fathom. But that's not what happened. All the men that led them into idolatry were the ones that he was saying to slaughter. Unfortunately, they were Israelites as well. So they slaughtered them, and then all the other men that followed and all the other men that didn't know anything, they kind of followed the leadership of the Levites. So when we're in Hebrews 7 and it talks about the people received the law from the Levitical priesthood, it's because the people had to follow them after he established them as the leaders. He established them as the ones that were supposed to be the priests instead of the firstborn. Now, if the firstborn of every single tribe became priests, then their people that they would be initiating the truth to would be the whole earth. But because only one tribe had to become priests, their main place of initiating the truth was to the other tribes. So they could not even give it to the world because they had to be busy giving it to themselves. And it's understandable. It's understandable because no faith. Without faith, it's impossible to please Yah. No desire, no heart was surrendered. No heart was circumcised, which Moses was telling them to do. So they were unable to. But that doesn't mean everybody. It just means, it just means the majority, unfortunately. And I think this is a very good point because it's the same today. We have whole billions of believers, but it's just like Israel. There's only a few that have received the gift from Yah because there's only a few that truly believe. It's just like that. But those few, before going into the promised land, they got to walk in this wilderness, helping the other people receive the ruach, helping the other people to believe. This is what we have to do. This is a wilderness. People, like the people, Yah said it very clearly. You will be like a tree planted by waters. You are the tree planted by the waters. So what's the wilderness? Wilderness is other people that are not planted by the waters. People that are dry bones, don't have no substance inside of them. So we need to help them to become those people. Help them to become those, until it's time. Just like John the Baptist, I'm one crying in the wilderness. What does he mean? He's just a guy yelling in the desert, or is he a guy yelling in the midst of dry people with no ruach, no spirit? He's trying to give them the living water. He's trying to give them the words of truth so they can be replenished or nourished. That's what he's yelling at. So when people thinking about wilderness, they always thinking about an actual place that they got to walk through. And it's like, you're already here. Go to a church. You want to go to a wilderness? Go to a church. Your nearby church. You'll see wilderness, man. You will see a wilderness.
Now answer my question. I'm sorry.
Huh?
After that, now ask you my question.
Yeah.
Love that prelude stuff. Now we hear the words. Yes. we hear the words, I think she's fine. We hear the words laws, statutes, and commandments, right? And ordinances. Brother Jadi, on that note, I hear people, we say, oh yeah, you must keep the law, statutes, commandments. We think the commandments, we think we got a grasp on the commandments, but when you hear statutes or ordinances, how would you explain that? Because, for people to talk about something, we must all be on the same page. And when someone says that, my mind just kind of go, I don't know, maybe others, but it's like ordinance and statutes. Keep the law, statutes, commandments. I tend to think, and you can correct me, but I tend to think statutes is something it's a command, but it's more the detailed things like ceremonial law. Hey, we're to keep it this way. Maybe that's ordinances. But anyway, how would you try to explain it? Because I hear people say, yeah, law, statutes, and commandments, and ordinances even.
I would
There's
try
something
to
that's clear in your mind how you look at it, so it makes it easier, other than trying to read it or maybe go to the book and find that exactly kind of categorize in your mind.
So I would have these categories in my mind, which I'm about to explain, but I won't emphasize so much on the words commandments, statutes, judgments, ordinances, because in the scripture, the English word is sometimes used interchangeably. So the English words get thrown around all around. So I like to just keep a general thing of what Yah's telling me. And whatever fits in those categories, fits in those categories. There's commandments. Don't do, right? Don't do. Or what I like to say is you will do. You will do or you will not do. You will have no other gods before me. You shall, thou shalt. You will not have any idols. So those things those are charges, right? I charge you, I command you, this is what you do. A judgment is what we see beginning in chapter 21, where he says, these are my judgments. Judgment is not the same as condemnation judgment. Condemnation judgment is not the same as the judgments. The judgments are sentences, like things that you are sentenced to do because of a situation. Meaning, if you do something, the sentence is this, right? You steal, you pay back 5 times. Those are judgments, right? Somebody does something wrong, they have to do this in response or what do they call it? To rectify. There we go. To rectify. Is that to rectify the situation? Right. So judgments is rectifying situations that have occurred. So when you look at chapter 21, you're going to see situations that occur. This is how you need to rectify those situations.
Probably Exodus 21, right?
Exodus 21. Yeah. So, but it's spread out after that too. So when you see the prophets and different people talking about different, how to rectify certain things, it's based off of the judgments that's within Exodus, and then Leviticus. Yah continued to expand the same ideas into different ones. And I think that's what's referred to as statutes. Like statutes is like what you were saying, the details of something that has already existed. Like you have don't kill, but then a statute to that is don't hate, right? And the statute to that is don't despise, don't be partial. That's all a part of killing. It's just a statute, right? Ordinances is the requirements for whatever it is. So if one of these statutes or commandments are broken, there's a requirement that's attached to these things. So the curses, those were ordinances that had to be executed when a person is sentenced by the judges. So the ordinances, the wages of sin is death. Death would be the ordinance, the requirement for sin or transgression of the law. So I keep it like that in my mind because the English words flip around. They're using interchangeably. You could see them under commandment one day. Statute is the commandment. Precept is the
yeah, because you try to read the English.
yeah. You try to keep each word separate. That's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. But if you keep a concept of how Yah told you what he said, then you'll understand. Precept is just an understanding. It's a perspective, like how Yah sees things. His perception or his perspective is the precept. So when it says precept upon precept, means not my perspective of the scripture, his perspective, the way he sees it is a precept to me, because it's something that there's no wiggle room. It doesn't change. It's a principle that never changes because this is Yah's perspective of it. So that's how I would look at all of them: commandments, charges, ordinances, statutes. I would, based off of which one he's talking about, would let me know which definition would apply to it. Yeah. Just like when he says sin and iniquity, iniquity more emphasizes on like rebellion, like a person who don't care that Yah said something is iniquity, but it's also sin as well by definition. But sin is general. So sin is not necessarily saying a specific way of transgressing Yah's law. Sin is just saying in general transgression of the law. Iniquity is emphasizing on your rebellion against Yah, knowing his law. Sin could be ignorant. You don't know, right? You misunderstand, by mistake, stuff like that. It's still sin, but you need to restore or rectify the situation. But when you're in rebellion, it's either repent or you die. It's either you repent, you die, or you get cut off from Yah's people. So very good to just differentiate and then apply it as you read the Torah. You're gonna see where those things fit, And I know sometimes I think there's some churches, like I know the Seventh-day Adventist Church, they say there's a ceremonial law and a moral law, and there's moral aspects, yeah, and there's ceremonial aspects, yeah. But you have to be very specific. There's a system. When the nation of Israel was created, there was a system that was set up to be observed by Israel, and that was the Levitical priesthood. When the sanctuary was set up, the Levites had to be priests, they had to offer sacrifices, and they had to do services in the sanctuary, lighting the incense, all of those other symbolic things. Those symbolic things is supposed to teach Israel the real thing that Yah wanted them to do at that time. Meaning it wasn't something for us to get the reality of it and them not to. Yah gave it to them to be in the same reality that we're in today by faith. He gave them the sacrifices so they could remember the sacrifice that was done for them, that was going to be done for them, that was planned to be done for them. The prophet, the one that was to come, the suffering servant, right? All of those prophecies and, Daniel 9, the sacrifices to cease, the Messiah coming, confirming the covenant with his people, all of those things they were supposed to look forward to. Genesis 3:15, the seed that was going to crush the head of the serpent. And his heel will be bruised, but he will bruise the head of the serpent. Like, where's that? Why nobody talk about where that guy is? All the people that do away with the New Testament, where's that guy? Where's that guy that's crushing the head of the serpent? And if they're still waiting for him, they're going to find somebody. Somebody going to come and convince them. But anyway, there's so much going on in the world because of misunderstandings of the scripture, and also because of lack of understanding of where certain explanations are. So we were talking about the brother from Kingdom of Context. A lot of these debates, they go around in circles because there's elements that they're not trying to, there's a script. Many doctrines have scripts attached to it. So you're going to hear the same group of verses on every debate. Everybody's going to bring the same group of verses. Oh, yahuah is yahusha because these same group of verses. Oh no, he's a Trinity because same group of verses. But then it's just like, you should be able to use every verse, any verse at any time. Bring me to, I should be able to use your verses. Let me use your verses. You use mine, I use yours. You show me how I'm using it incorrect, but they don't do that. Instead of taking what the person is saying in a debate and breaking it down for the person, they want to add to it. I'm gonna give you my group of verses now. And then what? You have a bunch of verses that nobody broke down. You just made the Bible contradict itself, like scriptures contradicting other scriptures. Like, why would you even go that way? Like in the Q&As, it's not like, I would love to go into some stuff that's on my mind. I have 1,000 things that's on my mind based off of people asking questions. I want to go far with some of these questions, but why would I do that? What benefit would that be to the person listening? I'm trying to address the person so that person can go home, investigate, and gain something more for themselves. If I go in a debate, I was actually on a debate last week about the feast, and last week about the Trinity, and 3 weeks ago about the feast. So I was on a debate. And the way we set it up was we explain, and then you explain, and then we ask each other questions. Because I know what I'm there for. I'm trying to see if I can help you understand. And I would assume that that's what they would be, but I can't really base anything off of what other people may do for me. I know I'm there because I really desire for the person I'm talking to listen. I don't care about the audience. I want them to hear the same thing I'm saying to this person. I'm not going to talk to this person, try to slip them up so I could win the audience. I want to talk to this person like as if we're the only ones in the room. But that's not how debates are. Usually it's like a show. It's a show for the people watching. And that's why it's going to be the same way. But if we can say, hey, I'm going to put my stuff to the side. Why do you say this? And then we can just talk about that first until we both analyze the same verse. And then we move on to my verse. What do you think about this? Okay. Why do you interpret it that way? Is it supposed to be? Should you not? Is that correct? These are all the things that we should be doing. But instead, it's like a game. How many verses I could cut you with? It's silly. It's a silly, silly place we live in. Let me go to Brother Ben, Sister Jamie.
Do you want to finish the Hebrews thing, or do you want me to ask my Daniel 9 question?
Oh yes, let me go to, I think Hebrews 8 it goes, but I want you to ask it. But let me go to the Hebrews 8. So we were talking about the priesthood, and you can still see that verse 1 still talks about the priesthood, and it talks about a current priesthood and a current sanctuary, a true tabernacle, right? So it's not talking about doing away with something. It's talking about going into the reality of something. So the sanctuary and the priesthood is going into a reality, the true tabernacle, the minister of the sanctuary, the true high priest, right? The true sacrifice. It says every high priest was ordained to offer gifts and sacrifices, wherefore it was a necessity that this man had somewhat also to offer. So the offerings and sacrifices that the priest was making, Messiah had to resemble or complete the representation that the priesthood gave, that the Levites gave as well. The sacrifice and offerings, right? So if the sacrifices and offerings was connected to Messiah's offering, Messiah had something to offer, just like that was represented by the priest's offerings and gifts. So he says, if he were on earth, he would not be a priest, seeing that there are priests that offer gifts according to the law. What law? What law is he talking about? So he says, who serve an example, and look what it says, shadow of heavenly things. So the priests, the sacrifices, and the sanctuary was examples and shadows of heavenly things. They were not, and he says, and Moses was admonished by Elohim when he was about to make the tabernacle. And he said this, he says, make sure that you make everything according to the pattern that I show you on the mountain. This is Exodus chapter 25 to 29. Make sure you make it exactly the way that I'm showing you, because they're supposed to be examples of something that's real, right? So the animals are examples of the Messiah, right? This man had something also to offer. These priests offered gifts and sacrifices, so it was a necessity that this man also had something to offer. And that's why when it says now he obtained a more excellent ministry, but he's a mediator of a better covenant and established on better promises. And that's why when you go back to the first, if the first had been faultless, he's not talking about the first covenant. He's not talking about the first covenant, like all the laws. He's talking about if the first demonstration, the same demonstration that was examples, the shadows, Exodus 29, he gives this to them. If you look at Exodus 29, this is when he tells Moses to come look at the pattern that he gives them. So he says, if the first had not, you see how covenant is implied? That's not supposed to be there. The word first is indicating former. So he's talking about the priesthood. If the former priesthood had been faultless, then there would be no sought for the second. Finding fault with them, not the covenant. Ain't nothing wrong with the covenant. There's nothing wrong with the covenant. It was finding fault with the people. The people was the issue, that Yah had to make a brand new covenant with the new priesthood involved. He had to fulfill the covenant with the priesthood. So he says, I'm going to make a new covenant. He says, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them out by the hand and led them out of the land of Egypt. And he says, why? Because they continued not in my covenant. So he's not making a covenant because the covenant was wrong or the covenant bad. He's making a covenant because they did not continue in it. They did not continue in it. So there's a different covenant that's going to be established differently. The different covenant is not new laws, because he says, I'm going to take my laws and I'm going to put it in your heart and write my laws in your mind. So the laws is not the issue. The examples, the shadows, the priesthood, the sacrifices, the tabernacle, everything that the Levites did is the law that was brought into reality. So the next covenant that you see in Jeremiah, you're going to see it say, no one is going to say no yahuah, because everyone will know me. Everyone that's going to be in this covenant is going to be in the covenant because they know me. That's not how it was with Israel. When he brought Israel out of Egypt, he brought them out of Egypt as unbelievers. When he gave Israel the law, he gave Israel the law, they were unbelievers. They didn't know Yah. He gave them a covenant because he made a promise with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So he says the next time I make this covenant, right? This covenant, same one, it's not going to be based off of an example to help everybody out because everybody's going to know me. Since everybody knows me, nobody needs no Levitical priesthood. They can be priests, just like I wanted them to in Exodus 19. You see? So what's happening is it says that the new is coming, the former is passing away because people are still in a mindset of breaking a covenant or not believing, not following Yah. So people are still in this not following Yah. So he says that people are moving into the new or renewed and the old is vanishing away. If this is talking about the tree, why is it vanishing away when Paul is teaching? It should have vanished away at the tree, right? At the cross with Messiah. But instead, people were still involved in this broken, unbelieving covenant. And Yah says, we're going into this new covenant where nobody is going to be, I'm not with nobody unless you are with me. And everybody that's going to be in my people is not going to have to tell somebody to know Yahuwah. You may have to tell somebody when the Shabbat is. You may have to tell somebody what some things mean, but nobody's going to have to tell somebody to believe. All of my people will believe. That's not how it was with Israel. In Israel, I promise that I'm going to take Abraham's seed and make them a nation. He didn't say that they had to believe. I'm going to give them my law. That's why he had so much mercy on the stiff-necked people. Why? Because he understood. You already don't believe. You already don't believe. Deuteronomy chapter 5, he said he gave them the words, and then he said, all that you have said, we will do. And then in verse 29, Yahuwah said, oh, that they had a heart in them, that they would fear me and keep my commandments, that it may be well with them and their children always. So right after they said, we're going to do everything that you say, Yah says, I wish you guys had a heart that you feared me. I wish you actually feared me. You see what I'm saying? So Yah is not dealing with the same people now. You're not entering into no covenant if you don't believe off the bat. That's the new covenant. The new covenant it's not based off of creating a nation, creating a nation based off of a promise I made with Abraham. It's based off of creating a nation based off of your belief with me. You are entering into a nation because you believe. Now, he did this in the past as well, too. And that's why when people look at all these things, that you have the Levitical priesthood, you have the Melchizedek priesthood at the same time. You had all of these things at the same time. You had people entering into everlasting covenant, people having I don't want to say Abrahamic covenant, because the covenant for Abraham was that he was going to be the father of many nations. So the idea that Abrahamic covenant is stuck to just Israel, that don't make sense. Because he was promised that he was going to be the father of many nations, not one nation. But it seems like there's like this emphasis every time you mention Abrahamic covenant, there's this emphasis on only Israel, but that's not even the promise. His name changed to Abraham because it meant father of many nations. So when is the many nations part coming in? It didn't really come in when Israel was there, unfortunately. So the new covenant is really based off of a lot of these things that we can show from the old or the former covenant. But as far as the laws that was given, those things are not based off of the shadows and the examples and the types and the symbolisms and representations, those are not based off of those things. Feast is not based off of those things. Feast is a plan of salvation. Is how Yah is going to redeem his people now. Sacrifices, sacrifices pointed to Messiah since he gave it to Adam. Priesthood, well, all of his people are supposed to be priesthood. Levitical priesthood, Levitical priesthood was pointing to Messiah as the high priest. Remember, the Levites wasn't high priests, only Aaron. So Aaron's priesthood is representing Messiah. Messiah was going to be the high priest. So who's the Levites supposed to be? All of us. All of us are supposed to be like the Levites, and the high priest is supposed to be Messiah. It was a type. It was an example, like we just read. Let me pull it up, right? So look at what he says here. It says, they continued not in my covenant. And he says, they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not. He's talking about Israel. He regarded them not. So a bunch of people that didn't believe, that called themselves Israel, Yah did not regard them as his people, because they did not continue in this covenant. But then he says, this law I will make with the house of Israel and the house of Jacob. He says, I will put my laws into their minds. What laws? When people want to do away with covenants, the first thing you need to tell them is, what laws is he? People are doing away with covenants because they're trying to do away with laws. So now you have to engage in this conversation. What law is he putting in your hearts? Because people that's doing away with the covenants are trying to say there's no laws. You see what I'm saying? So if you're going into a brand new covenant and we're leaving the old one behind, why is he taking his laws from that one? Right? Because he already has laws. Why is he taking my laws and reinstituting his laws? So now you have to know, what laws is he reinstituting? Is he reinstituting the Levitical priesthood? Is he reinstituting the sacrificial laws? Is he reinstituting the sanctuary services? No, because that's the only thing he talks about in Hebrews 7, 8, and 9. He doesn't talk about feasts, thou shalt not. He doesn't talk about nothing else except for everything that pertained to the Levitical order. That's it. So if you include anything else, it would have had to been something that only the Levites and Aaron's sons was told to do according to the law. The law commanded that they are the only ones to do these things. So let me see if and he says that they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, right? He's going to tell you specifically what they're not going to teach you. Know yahuah. He didn't say he's not going to teach you nothing. He didn't say there's not going to be no teachers. He said that there's not going to be nobody telling somebody who believes to know who yahuah is. The Levites had to do that to Israel all the time. That's why there was Levites all over the place, to tell the children of Israel to know yahuah. And then it says, I will be merciful to those who are unrighteous, and his iniquities I will remember no more. And he says, anew, right? Not covenant, anew, he had made the first old. So when you enter into a new, renewed covenant with Yah in faith and belief, you no longer are like those unbelieving Israelites. You are no longer like those Israelites that have not continued in the law. You are no longer like that. But it says, now that which is decayed and waxed old is ready to vanish away. Meaning that when people move into a new covenant or a new experience with Yah by faith, They are no longer under a broken covenant. But there is a lot of people that's still under a broken, powerless covenant based off of, there's no power, there's no priesthood, there's no salvation, there's no Messiah, because you have not continued in the covenant. So if you do not continue in the covenant, your covenant is broken, and you need a new covenant. You stay in this covenant that is broken until you enter into a new covenant. The more people enter into a new covenant, the more the old experience will vanish away. This is not talking about the cross. This is not talking about, this is the book of Hebrews. So this is like probably 40, 50 years after Messiah died. So 30, 40 years after Messiah died. No, I would say 20, 30 years after Messiah died. Why is it ready to vanish away? Because people are entering into a renewed covenant with Yah, and people are leaving their old, broken, covenant, the covenant that they did not continue in, that the only thing that they have is the requirements or the ordinances of death, like the penalty for breaking the law is the only thing they have left. So Yahushua basically did that. Now look at what verse chapter 9, it goes right back into the worldly sanctuary and what they had to do in the worldly sanctuary. So if they have to see that this is not talking about anything except for what the Levites had to do. But by the time you get to the redemption of Messiah section right here, you're going to see here, it says, neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood he entered in once into the holy place. Once. He says, for if the blood of bulls and goats and ashes of the heifer, sprinkling of unclean, the heifer is the red heifer that they had to kill, that they keep the ashes outside the camp, and they had to go get purified by rubbing their hands on the ashes. It says, if the blood of bulls and goats and ashes of heifer, sprinkling of unclean sanctuary, sanctified and purified the flesh. It says, how much more shall the blood of Messiah, who through the eternal spirit offered himself, right, without spot to Elohim, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living Elohim. So he continuously, through this chapter 9, he's going to constantly say, talks about the pattern, right? If therefore there's necessary that the patterns of things which is in heaven was purified by these, but the heavenly things themselves by better sacrifices. So there's something that the Levitical priesthood could not do that the reality of Messiah did. So it says the Messiah is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figure of the true. So again, but into heaven to appear before the presence of Elohim for us. And he says, nor yet that he should offer himself often, as the high priest entered into the holy place every year with blood of others. For then he must have also suffered since the foundation of the world. But now once in the end of the world, he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. So there's never and then chapter 10 continues. So 7, 8, 9, 10, it continues to continuously say the sacrifices was replaced by Messiah's sacrifice. They sacrificed all the time. Messiah only had to do it once. They had to do this all the time. Messiah only did it once. He only had to do it once. Those blood and bulls could not clean them because they kept on having to do it again. Messiah's blood did it once. So the idea from Daniel 9 is that the Messiah was going to cause the sacrifices and offerings to stop. Why? Because he did it. It was only, is that connected to the question you had, Sister Jamie?
Yeah. So, So Daniel 9:27, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. It's funny because when I was still very, very deep in all the deception and in my previous belief, I actually can remember the moment or one of the moments that this particular verse affected me. And it's almost like this is a linchpin for both cases in a lot of ways, because whenever you tell someone that in order to show Yah that you love him, you need to keep his commandments, the
Right.
first thing they say is, so what, you want me to sacrifice something?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and if people misunderstand this verse, then they don't have that evidence to show someone.
Right.
It's funny because in the Left Behind movie, when Nikolai's like in slow motion and they're reading this verse as he walks by, I can remember that moment now because I know, having read all of Daniel 9, none of it is about anti-Messiah, but it's just it's so funny how that sets up so much of the end time deception when it comes to like building a false temple, and so much of the end times deception is built around this verse. So
Right.
what I guess what my question is any clarity that you can bring to like how you would use this verse in particular to minister to people, and things that we may be misunderstanding about it, I'd appreciate, because this verse in particular just seems like not only is the enemy using it against people, but it's also a tool for us as well if we fully understand it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Now, this is the 70-week prophecy. This 70-week prophecy is the time of the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem, all the way to the time of Messiah. It says it right here in verse 25. It says, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. That's 7 weeks plus 62 weeks. So 7 weeks plus 62 weeks. The street shall be built, the wall, even in troublous times. So when was the commandment given to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem? You would go to Ezra chapter 7. It was the prince of Persia told Israel to go and rebuild Jerusalem. This is where we get the book of Ezra and the book of Nehemiah during the time of the rebuilding of Jerusalem and the restoration of Jerusalem. So this is a time frame that literally gives you the starting. So it says from the going forth. So the 70 weeks starts at the time that the commandment to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. That is when the king of Persia told them, whatever you need, you can take it, go and rebuild Israel and Jerusalem. Let's see if I think it's right here. Right here, verse 21. I, Artaxerxes the king, do make a decree to all the treasurers which are beyond the river, whatsoever Ezra the priest, the scribe of the law of Elohim of heaven, shall require of you, it be done speedily. It says, whatsoever is commanded by Elohim of heaven, let it be done diligently for the house of Elohim of heaven. For why should there be wrath against the realm of the king and his son? So we have the king of Persia commanding everybody to give the priests everything that they need to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. And the book of Nehemiah is the connection as well. Nehemiah goes to Jerusalem because they started getting lazy. And he's like, they didn't build up the walls. So he went to make sure that they built up the walls around the city. So watch what it says in Daniel. This is when you're dealing with prophecy, it's always going to be like a puzzle, But the good thing is everything that's said, you can you can match it up with scripture. So look at what it says. 70 weeks are determined upon your people and upon your holy city, right? To finish the transgression, to make an end to sin, meaning like he's no longer punishing them or leaving them in captivity. Meaning this is the end of sin. This is the end of the captivity, not necessarily sin is going to disappear. So he says, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So we're going to talk about that. It says, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to rebuild Jerusalem all the way unto the Messiah, he gives you a time frame, 7 weeks, 7 weeks and 62 weeks. 7 weeks and 62 weeks is 69 weeks, right? That's 69 weeks, right? 7 weeks plus 62 weeks is 69 weeks. You see that? After the 62 weeks, so it's talking about the same time period, the Messiah shall be cut off. That means that he's gonna die. But Yah's given us 70 weeks, not 69 weeks. Where's the other week? Where's the last week to make 70 weeks? Right here. All of these numbers equal 70 weeks. Now, what's happening is people are not understanding how to determine prophecy time, because it did not take 62 weeks from the time of Persia through the time of Greece all the way to the time of Rome. So the way that they're telling prophetic time is literal. They're taking it's too literal. But there's another thing. If you take 70 weeks, I think it's seven times 70. 7 times 70, because a week is 7 days. 70 weeks. So 70 sets of 7 is actually 490 days. So 70 weeks is actually 490 days. Now, how does Yah count prophetic days? Prophetic days is counted as prophetic years. The explanation is given when he told Moses. He told Moses that they were going to be in the wilderness for 40 days, and he says a day shall be for a year. And then he says 40 years. So if you go look, he gave Moses the prophetic time and saying, you're going to be in the wilderness for 40 days, a day for a year, 40 years. He told Ezekiel that a day will be for a year. So every prophetic timing he gave to Ezekiel, he told him flat out. Let me show you the verse instead, so you guys can have the verse. So that way I'm not sounding crazy on this video. Now I haven't went through this in a long time. All right. All right. So the first verse I'm going to show you guys, it's in Numbers chapter 14, verse 34. All right, because I can't just do everything off of memory a lot of times. Right, so look at this. It says, your children shall wander in the wilderness for 40 years and bear your whoredoms until your carcasses be wasted in the wilderness. It says, after the number of the days in which you have searched the land, 40 days, each day for a year, shall you bear your iniquities, even 40 years. So he took the 40 days and then he added, well, he said the 40 days will be years. So instead of you did this for 40 days, so each day will be for a year. That's just one aspect. Let me see if I could find the other one. Oh, there you go. Ezekiel, verse 5, he says, I have laid upon you the years of their iniquity according to the number of the days, 390 days, so shall you bear the iniquity of the house of Israel. When you have accomplished them, lie again on your right side. You shall bear the iniquity of the house of Judah for 40 days. I have appointed you each day for a year. So 40 years he's appointed to. Whenever he gives the number is accurate. It's just that the number is not the days. There's no 490 days between Persia and the Messiah. But there is 490 years between Persia and the Messiah. Because you go to the Persian Empire, to the Greek Empire, to the Roman Empire. That's not 490 days. So 70 weeks is 490 years. And then that 1 week is 7 years. Messiah will be cut off in the middle of the week. How many years is the middle? So you take seven years because a week is 7 days. In the middle of the week, he was cut off. How many years is that? The middle of a week is how many years? How many days?
3.5.
3.5. How long was Messiah's ministry?
Wasn't it 3.5 years?
3.5 years. What happened at the end of 3.5 years?
He was crucified.
He was killed, right? So he was cut off. Isaiah chapter 53 uses the same language, said that he was cut off from the land of the living. So that 1 week is the last member. Is from the time that they went to rebuild Jerusalem to the time that Messiah came. So that final week of this 490 years was the last 7 years that Messiah was there. His ministry, when he died, he was cut off. That's how he caused the sacrifices and offerings to stop. When he was cut off, when he died. When he died, the veil ripped in the temple. The veil ripped in the temple to show that the temple services that the Levitical priests occupied and performed was done. So now the veil ripped. So who could look? Who could look inside the veil? Everybody could look in there. It's not just the priest. The veil ripped right down the middle. Everybody's looking in the temple now. Everybody could go, could see in there. It's not just Levites no more. So that's what
I never thought about it so literally. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. It's real cool when you see the literal merging. So he gives us these literal symbolic things, and then you see it like merging with with the reality. And you see how those symbols, that's why Yah told Moses, make sure you do it like the way that I told you on the mountain, based off of the pattern, because it's so close to what actually is going to happen. It will prove to us that he fulfilled these things. Who had to offer the sacrifices? The priests. But who offered Messiah? He laid down his own life. He offered himself. He gave the offering as a priest for the people. He gave himself He offered himself. Yah gave him back his life in a resurrection. He now becomes the intercessor. He has to cleanse heavenly things with better sacrifices, like it says. Now, when you go to Daniel 9, that whole time frame, he tells you exactly how long these things take. What did he say? He said 7 weeks. Let's go back to Daniel. Yeah, look at this. 7 weeks. How many days is 7 weeks? Seven sevens, right? A week is 7. 7 sevens. It's 49. 7 sevens is 49. 62 sevens, 62 weeks, right? 62 sevens. I think that's 62 sevens. I'm gonna have to break out the calculator now.
434.
434?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. 434 plus 49, right? So 7 weeks plus 62, 434 plus 49 is what?
483.
483, right? And then you have 1 week, which is another 7 days. So 483 plus 7 is what?
490.
490. That's 70 weeks. 70 weeks is 490 days. A day for a year, according to the way that he prophesied, it's 490 years. How long was the temple built? It was 40 years. Remember, the priest said to Messiah, we built this temple in 40 years, about 40 years. That was 49 weeks. That was 7 weeks. But then there was another time frame from the time that the temple was built. Ezra rebuilt the temple. If you read Zechariah, Ezra, Zerubbabel, they rebuilt the temple. Yahusha, the priest, they rebuilt the temple during the time of Persia. They went through the time of Greece. They ended up in the time of Rome when the Messiah came. And then it wasn't just talking about when the Messiah came, it was talking about when the Messiah started his ministry, because his ministry was only 3.5 years. How can you prove his ministry was 3.5 years? How can we prove it?
I've always wanted to know. I don't know.
The verse we just read.
Messiah had 3 Passovers in the Gospels. When he was older, there was 3 Passovers that he had. 2 Passovers that he didn't die on, 1 Passover that he did die on. 3 separate Passovers. 3 Passovers. It has a tabernacles. You can see the timing. When you read the Gospels, you can see the different timing. So the Passover was coming right before when he was having. See, now I got to put all these verses together for you guys, or you guys can look it up too. So right before he fed the 5,000, the Passover was coming. So it says the Passover or the feast was coming. That was one feast because he didn't die at that time. I think there's some people saying that he only had 1 year, a 1 year ministry, but he had 3 Passovers. He died on his 3rd Passover with his disciples. Remember, it said the great day of the feast, that was Tabernacles. So he was there during Tabernacles, Passover, and then 2 more years. 2 more years. That would make his ministry start in the fall. So he would start his ministry in the fall, end his ministry on the spring at Passover. That's when he would be cut off. And what about the next 3.5 years? Next 3.5 years would be his disciples confirming the covenant. Let me show you this verse of confirmation of the covenant. Look what he says. So then after the master has spoken with them, he was received up into heaven and sat on the right hand of Elohim, and they went forth and they preached everywhere, and the master working with them and confirming the word with signs following. What word were they preaching? They were preaching for people to enter into the covenant, confirming the covenant. 7 years, 3.5 years with him. And then it said that the master was with his disciples confirming the word. It was 7 years. The interesting thing is that at the end of those 7 years is the time frame that many people believe that Stephen was stoned. So at the time that Stephen was stoned, the 7 years was confirmed. So even though there was a continuation of the preaching of the covenant, there was a different direction that Yah took where he called Paul to go to the nations. So there was a confirming of the covenant by his disciples to Israel. And then at the end of that 7-year confirmation, or that 1 week confirmation, Paul and Stephen come into context. Stephen was the first person ever killed for teaching the covenant. So Stephen was the first martyr killed for preaching the covenant, and Yah called Paul to go to the nations. So Stephen was killed by Israelites, and Yah told Paul, go to the nations. He also told Peter, go to the nations too. So when you get into covenants and prophecy, it gets deep. It gets deep. I think that we could put it together by looking at the history of Scripture. Like, Scripture tells you all the details that you need to see. You don't need to know about. You don't need to read Josephus, find out what happened with that Greek emperor that slaughtered the pig. No, it has nothing to do with that dude. Which many people say that 40 the 70 weeks has to do with it starts with an A.
Antiochus Epiphanes.
Antiochus. That when he slaughtered the pig, that was some type of confirmation or causing the sacrifices to cease. That's just silly. That's silly. Because they rebuilt it after and they started to sacrifice. That's why we have the Feast of Dedication. That's why we have Hanukkah, because they started sacrificing again. So, so this is actually 490 years from the time that Jerusalem was there to the time the Messiah came in the Roman Empire. 490 years bring you from Persia to Rome. And that last week, that last 409 is so accurate. That last 490th year, that last 7 years, you have Messiah, and then you have Messiah with his disciples by the Ruach. And then after that's done, they go to the nations. Now, it doesn't mean that Israel's not preached to, but remember, first Israel, then to the Gentiles, right? So the 70 weeks is not talking about Gentiles. It's talking about Israel. How can I bring in an everlasting covenant in Israel? So guess what he did? He only allowed the ones that believed to enter into the covenant. Everybody else that did not believe did not enter into a covenant. The new covenant was, I don't have to tell nobody to know Yahuwah because they all would know me. So when Messiah came and everybody who accepted Messiah, those were the only ones in the covenant that was in Jeremiah 31. That's when they started entering into that covenant in Jeremiah 31, the new covenant. Because they believed Messiah, they knew Yahuwah already, and they recognized Messiah from Scripture. They understood who he was as a son of Yah. The Father revealed the Son to them. This is my beloved Son, right? This is my Son. This is my Son. This is my Son. He didn't say this is me. This is the other me. This is my twin, my triplet. No, he didn't say none of that. He said, this is my Son. Hear him. This is my Son. This is my Son. Yahuwah confirmed him. He confirmed his disciples by giving them miracles and allowing them to heal and do these different things in the name of Yahusha. And he confirmed the covenant for the other 3.5 years in his disciples until Stephen was killed. Then Yah sent prophets to the nation, starting with Paul.
That's good. Praise Yah. Thanks.
Praise Yah. Praise Yah. When you get me on this prophecy studies, I was like, I want to start from the beginning because it's a lot there. But I could hear that you guys have been dissecting that already, which is good. But yeah, that's another thing that a lot of people they make it too difficult. But it's consistent. How did Yah give time before when he wanted to talk about distance, like a distance of time, right? 40 days, 40 years. He gave a day for a year. So every time you see timing, it's going to be accurate if you add it, if you correlate it as a year, right? Daniel 8 talks about 2,300 days. That's years.
It's so funny that you said that because just maybe 2 weeks ago, somebody had just told me how difficult Daniel and Isaiah and Revelation is, and I can't understand it on my own, and coming out of the old belief, and someone who still believes that way and is relying on people who have no idea what they're talking about to tell them what to believe. And it's just like, that's not true. If you actually study and break it down and understand a little bit more about history, it's not that it's not difficult, it's a puzzle. That's the whole point, is that you have to be willing to do the work to find all the information. But praise Yah that it's there and easy to understand for the people who are willing to dive in and do it. So.
Right. And I like that you said is there. I think a lot of times people take prophecy out from the Bible and then you have to figure it out. Like it tells you, the Bible tells you what to look for in history. History doesn't tell you what the Bible means. You know, sometimes people use historians to try to say what the Bible is saying, and it's like, you're like, I don't even see that in the scripture. But the scripture has indicators that history has to submit to in order for you to connect the two. You know, just like he confirmed the covenant for 7 years, but in the midst, it says in the midst, he was cut off. In the middle of it, he was cut off. And then, so if you look at it, who was doing the other 3.5 years? So when you get to Mark 16, and it says that he was confirming the word in Mark 16, that the master was with his disciples confirming it. It just shows you that he's continuing to confirm the covenant with his people until they killed the first, until Stephen. Then Yah called Paul to go somewhere else. Jew first, then the Greeks.
It's so funny though, because people are always trying to take our current understanding of things in the world, or like making prophecy fit what they see around them, instead of just letting the Bible tell us what it is.
Yes, there's going to be crazy stuff happening around us all the time. And you know what I hate? Every time something happens, there's a prophecy study on what happened. Israel got bombed by Hamas. All of a sudden, there's 1,000 books about how Hamas
Prophecy filled.
is the Hebrew word for violence. And like I can picture like an Arab like sitting there like a Arab, probably an Arab Torah keeper, right? Sitting there like, these guys are calling us terrorists just because I'm over here. It's just it's a horrible thing. And it has, the only thing that it has to do with is just wickedness. There's no prophecy attached to it. There's no foresight. Yah said this is gonna happen, and all it is people taking dominion over other people, conquering other people, manipulating nations against nation, rising for whatever gain they can receive from it. And that's all it is. Why? One, Ashkenazis are not the Jews. Palestinians, they were there. They were there. You can't just be like, all right, get out after they conquered the place. Like, you can't do that.
I'm not without recourse anyway.
But United Nations, they did that. Hey, you could go over here, they'll go over here. That's what we're gonna do now. Okay. That has nothing to do with Yah. Yah did not give you no land by calling the United Nations to come and help. That's not Yah's hand. But that's what people are doing.
If anything, it's the false perception of the end times is what it is.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because everybody want to look over there in Jerusalem. But here's the thing. Somebody's going to come over there in Jerusalem. Muslims are looking over there. Christians are looking over there. Jews looking over there. Atheistic nations is looking over there. Somebody's going to come over there. Somebody's going to appear there, float down over there. Satan is going to do something. And everybody's going to be already over there, just like Messiah said. When they say Christ is over there, do not go. That's what he said. Everybody's saying Messiah is already over there. The Jews are saying there's some dude named Messiah, not named Messiah, but there's a dude from the supposed tribe of Judah. He's already walking around over there. There's a group of Jewish people that they call Melchizedeks. Like they call them Melchizedeks. And guess what they are? They're not even like this. You look it up. Whenever you get a chance, look up who is Melchizedek, Jewish. Try to stick to that. They're gonna tell you that it's not like, they're not like real people. They're not real people. They're like righteous entities that's like filled with the spirit walking around. Like those rabbis that teach the Kabbalah, they're like called Melchizedeks. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy what's going on, and everybody's eating it up. And you know what they're going to use? They're going to try to use the scriptures. They're not going to use the Quran. They're not going to use the Baha'i religion, the Buddhist gurus and the Hindus gurus. They're not going to use none of those things, none of those writings. They're going to use the scriptures. They're going to use the Torah. They're going to use the New Testament. Look at what the Prime Minister of Israel is doing. Everything that he said this week, he mentioned, Jesus like 4 times in his speeches, just to get Christians to believe and to support them. And I'm just like, that's real silly, because you guys don't believe that Christians are even, they believe Christians are unbelievers. In a sense, they are, but still, they're calling on like false ideas that they already believe is false. You see the difference? It's like me calling on Buddha, saying, "Come on, guys, you should help me. Remember, Buddha was hanging out with me the other day, and you should help me because Buddha was here. That's crazy. No. So it's crazy how they're utilizing, Zionist mindset is that, it's not just that Israel belongs to me. That's not the Zionist mindset. Zionist mindset is that I'm supposed to run the whole world. That's the Zionist mindset. So I may give a study. I'm going to give a study, not necessarily a study, but I'm going to show some scripture, but I'm going to show videos of people admitting like we're supposed to take, like people saying we're supposed to take America. Like Hasidic Jews in New York talking about we're supposed to take, like, America is ours. So people think that they just, hey, let's take Israel. No, they have a different mindset. Whoever can help them take whatever they believe they should take, that's who they're gonna join with. United Nations, United States, whoever it is. So, but anyway, man, you guys had some deep behind questions. And I feel like we have to go over that 70 weeks, that 2,300 days thing again, because I'm not sure if it's going to come up. I believe it's going to come up. It's been coming up for years, people trying to interpret it. But I want to see if we could just break it down in the simplest fashion and allow the history that's in the Bible to tell us what happened, just like we read. If you go back and read Ezra and Nehemiah, you'll see what Daniel 9 is actually talking about. Now remember, Daniel 9 is talking about before, he's writing that before they even get free. So all of that description is in Ezra and Nehemiah when they actually get free. So we already know that one book is older than the other books. So it's really good to see how Nehemiah is actually a historic book. It's not a prophetic book. Nehemiah wasn't a prophet. He didn't get visions and all of that stuff. The only thing he did was he looked at the scriptures and he did what it said. And he asked Yah to bless his efforts, and Yah blessed him. So Nehemiah and Ezra is perfect books to look at the history of Daniel 9. It's in Ezra and Ezra and Nehemiah. So, but all right, guys, we're gonna close. And praise Yah. Look forward to sitting down with you guys in 2 weeks. Yes. Next week is going to be the Proverbs study. We're on the last 11 verses of Proverbs 1. There's a lot in there. So, and then of course, Friday we're doing spiritual warfare. We're going to be touching on the armor of Yah. We're going to be doing a little recap on the principalities and powers, but we're going to be bringing the principalities and power talk into the armor of Yah. So we're going to be doing that Friday. All right. So shalom, guys. Yah bless you guys and keep you guys. And Yah bless you guys.
Shalom. Have a good night.
Shalom.
Guys.
Thank you.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom.